Thank you for that introduction, Mike. Well, Kristen, let me ask you first. What do you think holistic education is?
That's a really good question. And I came to this session because I wasn't quite sure what it meant. But I have an inkling that it's about focusing on broader areas than the specific subject that you're teaching.
Okay, yeah. It can. That's very good. Let me read a quote here. When I started to put together this study for the university, and I'll go into this in more detail later, they wanted to see in writing a definition. So I found this really good quote from Bill Kent University's graduate student of education, Professor Robin Ann Martin, describes holistic education by saying, at its most general level, what distinguishes holistic education from other forms of education are its goals, its attention to experiential learning, and the significance that it places on relationships and primary human values within the learning environment. So basically, that's saying using your mind, your heart, and your hands in the learning process, basically being engaged with the mind and the body. So that philosophy is something that really guides my work and my lesson planning and preparation. Let me bring up the PowerPoint here. Okay. Let's see. Oh, let's do. Yep. Here we go. Okay, so I have a very in-depth background with holistic education, starting with some of my first jobs out of college and even my earlier ESL teaching. So as Mike said, at one point I worked for Epic in Korea, where they had a lot of expectations to create activities that were supposed to engage the kids. Likewise, here in Japan, at one point I worked on the JET program, which was kind of similar philosophy activities for the kids. But then beyond that, even when I was back in teaching in America and stuff, I would create a lot of activities with students. And when I worked in at a university in America in the international department, again, so many trainings where I was out trying to engage the students with their minds and their hands and moving through the whole learning process and working through it. So I started to get a little bit that way, but where I really started to get into experiential learning and holistic learning was in my graduate studies at the School for International Training. And you can see down here the picture on the right, that's the university up in Brattleboro, Vermont. And their whole curriculum is experiential learning based, active learning based. And we started to see as students how much we could really learn than just going through and reading the textbook and answering the questions. I mean, and we started retaining more because we were actually using it. And then shortly after, well, a few years after I graduated from there with my master's degree, I ended up getting a job at a school over here on the left, Rune School, over in Bangkok, Thailand. And this really kind of cemented everything. It was the final touches of my understanding of experiential learning. This particular school, you can see from the picture, it's a green school. It's a very pro-environmental school. They want to teach about the environment. So the school, they're in the middle of Bangkok in Thailand, and the hot season. We didn't have air conditioning, but it was actually pretty comfortable and cool inside by the way the buildings and stuff were designed. Um, so because they had that alternative thinking about the environment and stuff, they had very much alternative thinking about how to educate people. And again, we weren't allowed to use textbooks. The science teacher, if he wanted to talk about plants, he took the kids down to the courtyard, and they walked around and looked at the plants, touched the plants, talked about the plants, and studied and learned about them that way. So while I didn't work in sciences, and science is very easy to do hands-on activities, I worked over in the English department, English education. I quickly learned that it's very easy, whatever you teach, to do very hands-on active learning to engage the students. And one of the things that we were told about at that particular school and in my training with experiential learning, holistic learning, it's like the mother teaching the child to cook a favorite family recipe that's been passed down for generations. The mother, from her heart, wants this recipe to stay in the family, so she's going to do all she can to make sure the child learns. She can engage the student by saying, we need 3/4 of a cup. How much is that, as she passes over the measurement cup? And the kid is getting the hands-on learning by pouring exactly 3/4 of a cup of flour or whatever into the cup and measuring that way. So knowing how to connect all these dots and throw them into the classroom, I really started learning with, again, for example, hey, students, today we're going to learn about nature and the world around us. Let's go out and look at plants and trees and learn the vocabulary by going out and looking at a tree and talking about trees or whatever. So I got really good with creating very active activities between both the graduate school and especially at the school in Thailand, which, taking all that background, leading me into my current situation. Now, in my current working situation, I have my own like Hagwon English style school, which you can see with the picture of the kids. I have kind of a general umbrella organization I call World Wise, and I have a teaching component, a private language school component of that, and many other duties related to that. And within that teaching of those students, from children, I teach from children to adults. I don't use textbooks. It's all active, and keep the students engaged through various activities. And you can see in that picture, we were studying food. So at that point, we sat down and made sandwiches and salads and to learn about food. So that's kind of half my working situation. The other half is working at a place here called Teikyo, the bigger picture, out in a small town in the middle here in the middle of the mountains of Japan. And that's actually the high school. When I was hired by Teikyo in the same town, they had a high school and they had a college, and it was kind of a package thing. I had to work at both the college and the high school. So mostly with this presentation, I want to talk about my work at the college. And you can see a picture of the college in the middle of winter. And you can see the students, me with the students, and how I engage the students and push their boundaries of learning. So when I first started this job 9 years ago, the high school was like, or the college was like, you have to use the textbook. So go through and make sure the students learn the textbook. Well, you know, um, the students didn't like the textbook. They weren't responding. They would be falling asleep. Um, they weren't interested in that book at all. And because it seemed like I was able to get nowhere with these students, I went to the college and said, hey, I got to do something better. I got to create a better curriculum. Can I create a better curriculum? And the college was like, okay, yeah, but we want more information about it before we actually let you do that. So that's where I did a study and wrote it up formally, and then submitted it to the college. And it's where I found that particular quote. And I'll go more into that study in a little bit. But as I started putting together this new curriculum and thinking about it, I had to figure out the students' background and why they weren't responding well to only textbook. And that, a lot of that is they've gone through from preschool, kindergarten, up to, at this point, they were college students, all the way through a very heavily test-based educational system, a merit system based on test scores, which I know is very similar in Korea, unlike in my country, in the United States, where we have homework as part of the grade, class participation, and all this. So the students, grew up thinking that if we don't really pay much attention and we cram the night before the test, then we can probably pass the tests and carry this over, and that's what matters. So I had this cultural challenge to overcome. On top of that, my students were so unconfident with foreign language and their ability. And it was probably their least favorite subject, many of them in the class. And yet they had been enduring the system their whole life of the grammar, basing it on the test, and which was making their confidence even lower. But at the same time, while these students were, I had these challenges with students to overcome, I was looking at a world that was becoming more increasingly internationalized, and it was touching the educational system, and the students were going to have to probably face this at some point, because the students were studying to be preschool teachers. So even when I first came and taught in Japan, there wasn't any foreigners interacting with preschools. But by the time I started working with these students, so probably almost every preschool in Japan would be visited by foreign teachers. Not only that, there were more and more foreigners living in the country. As Japan became more internationalized, more people were moving in. So there were more foreigners sending students to Japanese preschools. So at some point, they were going to have to deal with intercultural competency and foreign language competency. So had to figure out how to bridge this gap. And then as I started looking more into curriculum design, the college made it very clear that, okay, you can do more experiential activity, but you also have to have a certain amount of the textbook in there. So there wasn't going to be any way I was going to be able to escape the textbook. It was going to be, how can I go with the textbook and make it more useful for the students? And that was where my background with experiential learning, active learning, holistic learning all came in. And I knew if I could do it right and could engage them, they would be better prepared for the future of their work, knowing that foreigners would be visiting, that they'd be dealing with more international students in their future careers. So I had already had certain experiential activities, and I decided it was time to kind of expand more and more of these activities. So I had an element where we worked with a unit where we worked with children's games and songs that little kids would enjoy. And then, I kind of had some moments where they made crafts and stuff that they could display on the wall. But I was like, okay, let's go deeper into teaching resources that they can do with kids. And then all kids love cultural events, Christmas, Halloween, for example. You can see over here in the top picture, they're Christmas, decorating the Christmas tree. And then there was a whole unit in the textbook about cooking and food. So it was very easy to create a cooking activity. And so, which you can see down here in the bottom picture, we learned about how to not just cook, but how to cook with children. And I quickly discovered that in putting together this new curriculum, that I needn't expect them to leave my year-long class speaking fluently in English. That by this point, they've had so much training that they should be more prepared. But what I could expect is them to know enough to interact with foreign teachers in the future, as well as how to pass on knowledge in English education and start preparing those students and make those children interested in English so that they have a better future. So I began to bring in this element with the new curriculum. And even to this day, I still use a fair amount of Japanese in teaching the students. So here are the very two bottom pictures, these two girls. One of the educational teaching resources we make is a feelings chart, where I make the students learn about emotions. And let me show you. This is one that's been put together, all made. You can kind of see there's feelings below each student, and they act it out. I take their pictures and they arrange it. And I make them go find emotions that they want to teach about and learn about. And then I show them how, with their students, after they've made it, they can make it with their students. And after they've made it, they can continue to use it as a teaching resource every day. They can ask the students, how are you? And the children can choose what emotion they like. So it was activities like this that I needed to bring in to this new curriculum. And I have Halloween up here because Halloween is big among preschools. So we do with this new curriculum more about Halloween. But when we do these particular activities, after I tell them, we go through the process of making it, and they're learning how to like the feelings, going out and researching, finding the words, bringing those words, acting it out. They're using their body to learn these words, and they put it on paper, so they're doing all the cutting and arranging of it. And then I tell them, you can go back and use this with kids. But I take these activities too, and I try and push their thinking even more. So every time we have an activity, I say, okay, for example, with Halloween, we made Halloween crafts, Halloween decorations. What are some other easy to make Halloween crafts that you can use, and how would you use that to teach English? For example, here you could teach colors black and orange. You could teach Halloween words, jack-o'-lantern, bat, witch, as you make this craft. And so I asked them to go kind of make activities and explain how to make these activities. So these were the new things that I began to incorporate into this new curriculum, along the elements of games and songs for children, teaching resources, cultural events, and of course, cooking and how to use cooking and food with the children for when they become teachers themselves. So with all that being said, I set out to make this study, and I'll let you read this slide first before I continue and tell more. I know probably going to want to read. I had to come up with questions. I came up with 10 questions to ask these students. Okay, you got it, Kristen? Did you read it?
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
Okay, all right, let me continue on then. So having had a little bit of these activities already, I wanted to also show the college that the students will get a lot out of their education. So I wanted to talk to former students. And so I wrote up these 10 questions to ask former students. And then I tracked down, I took a group of students that had graduated 3 years earlier. I wanted them to be a little bit into their careers, well into their careers, that they were used to teaching and working with preschool kids and do all this, but yet not too far out that they could still kind of remember some of their college studies. So I chose 3 years as the mark, and I went out and tried to find these students and talk to them about if they had learned anything from my class, if they were able to apply anything that they had learned from my class, and what recommendations they would have that would better prepare a teacher for an internationalized education. And so I think out of the 75 students that had graduated, I got to talk with maybe nearly a little more than 30. I think it was 32. So almost half. Um, and I had, a lot, I guess, during that time. Phone numbers, address had changed. So that's why I hadn't gotten in touch with a lot of them. But those, that almost 50% group was very helpful and very beneficial. And we sat down and we talked about their jobs, um, talked about how much they work with English in their jobs. Oh, I also have to say there were probably 4 students that I couldn't talk with. So actually it was less than 30. There was like 2 girls that were married and had children, so they had quit working, and one person, one boy, he wasn't even working with education anymore. He was working with in the game industry, creating computer games. And another girl actually um, ended up not working. She again had a whole other job. It was something like she was working in a manager at a department store. So the number did shrink a bit, but again, those students that I did talk to were very helpful, and the things that they remembered a lot about my class because it was so interactive, and that it helped them. Let me move over into here as I move into the results of the research. They remembered a lot about the class, and I guess a very pleasant surprise, and what was able to actually allow me to create a better curriculum was that they did learn a lot and they incorporated a lot into their work, especially from the unit where we worked with games and songs. They used a lot of those games and a lot of those songs. The cultural activities, which I emphasized a lot with Halloween and Christmas, but I also took in America's Independence Day, 4th of July, and Canada Day, and talked about these countries. They were even able to utilize crafts and ideas from those. But they also learned just how to make more interesting activities for their kids, even if they weren't exactly using the exact craft, like that picture of that Halloween craft that they made. They were able to learn how to put together a craft that the students might be a lot more interested in. And while they said they really appreciated the songs and the games, they wanted more culture, more about the holidays, because that was always such a huge event at the preschools. And they really wanted to know more how to work with those holidays. So in the new curriculum that I designed more in-depth units on Christmas, Halloween, and like I said, and that's when I brought in Canada Day and America's 4th of July to talk about culture. And then I expanded the whole fillings and cooking with kids units, because again, they said that they wanted more hands-on activities. The few that we had done were very helpful, but they wanted more of them, and to know how to use with their students. So later on, after these students graduated, they had taken something that they learned and were able to apply it to their workplace. And so I was able to show that to the university, and they said, yes, that sounds good. Let's make a whole new curriculum. And that's when I came up with more activities, even where I work with the textbook. There's a lesson about a unit about past tense, and we just try and talk about things in our past and stuff. I have an activity, very simple one, where we talk about the past, just on our own lives. So I brought in even smaller activities like that, but going back to those big ones of games and songs, and teaching resources, cultural events, and how to cook with children. The students now really respond really well to those. And in so many of their evaluations, they say, this is wonderful. We're feeling so much better about our future and feel well prepared for the workplace. And we plan to, in interviews, talk about how to make teaching resources and how to teach kids with activities. So even the current students are responding really well. And first, the college is very pleased that it seems like it's really preparing them for their future. And those who are graduated and I bump into and stuff, they reassure me that it is exactly what they need to help them with teaching. So this whole idea of working with your hands and creating activities where the students are learning at the same time by going through the activities, as well as igniting more interest because they're actually able to see how they're learning than just studying the words from the textbook. It does a wonderful job of preparing the kids and the students for the future and helping them with their English skills or whatever goal you have to teach. And my main goal is with these kids to prepare these teachers on how to teach English, and they seem to be getting a lot out of that. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for participating, Kristen. Are there any questions or anything?
We have some.
Sorry. Am I frozen?
I was just going to tell Patrick about your questions in the chat there.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry if I'm restating the obvious. My laptop just had I don't know what happened. I couldn't type in the chat box and everything was fuzzy, so I had to leave and come back on my phone. But my question was there any resistance when you proposed changes to the curriculum from parents? Because I can see you managed to persuade the college to take on your suggestions.
No, I didn't have any resistance from parents at all. And to be honest, I don't know if the parents knew much. I don't know if the students went back and talked with parents about it. I never heard anything from parents. I don't know if the college heard anything from parents. If the college did, they never said anything to me about that. And I didn't even think about the parents actually when I was designing that.
Because they're young adults, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't really apply to that situation. How about in your other schools? Because in Korea, it's really hard in hagwons or independent schools to do anything that deviates from, preparing for those big exams later on. They have a very specific idea of what students should be doing at each age to get to the Sunung exam or equivalent.
Oh, yeah, that is a great question. And yes, I do fight resistance. More at the high school, again, because I want to get those kids prepared for test scores. But in my own Hagwon style private language school, the parents, when they come in and they observe the classes and they see it and they see there's no particular textbook, but they see that the kids are really using the language. At first, there might be a little resistance, but they quickly open up. And then later on, they're just like, oh my gosh, we appreciate this as the kids are getting into their test. They know everything. They're ahead of the other students in class, and they're getting to where they're speaking. So once the parents can see it, they quickly see the results. So that's how I work with the parents, is I bring them in and let them see me apply it and use it and work with the kids. For example, in my own private schools, we spend 10-15 minutes just talking. And the kids, I really encourage the kids to try and use words that they learn and work within the vocabulary they know. And they can do things like, not too long ago, I had a conversation with a little 6th grade girl about astronomy. I mean, she didn't talk about comets and meteorites and stuff, but she's like, oh, teacher, do you like stars? Go look at the stars. They're beautiful. Every night I look at the stars. And so they can see their children doing this. So that might be one way to get parents around, is if you can kind of let them watch some of these activities. At the high school, coming back to the high school, I fight and knock heads a lot with the high school. But again, as the teachers can see, they're slowly opening up and becoming less resistant. And another success that I've had at high school is I do like a conversation test where I have the kids talk for 5 minutes and they record their talking, and then they go back and just transcribe what they spoke, and they're able to count the number of words that they spoke. And then later on we do that. So suddenly they have numbers. I'm able to put these words into numbers, and this learning into numbers, and that has been very persuasive with the high school. So again, it was kind of like with the college. Once I got, data from the interviewing the students that had graduated, that catches their attention. So if there's a way that you can show it, either through like putting it into numbers, or let them witness the activity and process, then the resistance is quickly overcome.
That's really great advice. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my last question was, because I missed a bit in the middle, I'm so sorry. Was the college, are they all training to be English teachers? Is that their major?
No, not even English teachers, preschool teachers.
Preschool teachers.
Mm-hmm. And all of them, that's the only thing that particular college.
Well, teacher training school. So I think your methods then for them are very valuable.
Yes.
Because they're going into an environment where they can really practice it with less resistance, because they're not so focused on exams.
Yes, exactly. Which I think is a big help. And I mean, with doing things like, I don't know if in a regular university you could come out to the class and say, hey, let's make cute little Halloween decorations. If the students would respond all that well, but because they want to work with children and they have a little bit of that childlike mentality, they're like, yay, let's make cute little Halloween decorations. So I am able to get away with some of that kind of stuff there that I might not be able to at other colleges.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's really in line with what you've experience through your career, and something that they can really take on and really develop themselves as future teachers as well. So it sounds like a great environment to be working in.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, I really am enjoying
Thank you
it.
for your insight.
Yeah, yeah. Mike, how are we doing on time?
We're just 12:47. So are there any more questions?
Anything else you'd like to-
I think we're pretty much towards the end of our time here. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. If we can all give him a clap here for thank you very much for presenting with us. And I hope everyone can take something away from this presentation. It's going to be uploaded somewhere. I'm not quite sure. It's being recorded. It's be uploaded somewhere.
KOTESOL YouTube, and I'll definitely be watching
Okay.
it back for the little middle part that I missed. I'm so sorry about
You're
that.
right.
Just absolutely
Yeah.
done.
No problem.
So even, there's 5 people here. That in the future, many more people will be able to watch it. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you,
Right,
Patrick.
thank you. Yep. Thank you for participating.